real quick. Okay, you can see it. All right, we're gonna try real hard to make this be in both places so that we can get it recorded. But we're not selling anywhere but here right now, just FYI. I'm gonna show up a couple more.
So here's that cute little seedling. Adorbs. Got lots of air roots there. Great margins. Super adorable. So definitely a cute one. And here we have, okay, we got tag is deep in there. Okay, this is RHM. Oh geez, cannot read that.
You see it?
I want to say that's a 3. It's a lot of numbers, but I want to say it starts.
RHM 24226 KPO4.
That's
Paterwally 029 and Unknown Cross.
That's this one. Very beautiful, very interesting. It's got a real interesting vibe to it. And then this one here, also deep in the cup. Come out, come out. Okay, RHM 24226 KPO5. That's the one that has the green leaves. So it started out with those bright, like yellow with pink, and then it grew those green ones. Isn't that wild? Still beautiful nonetheless, but interesting and green. And now we have this one, which is another small RHM 24226 KPO3. Okay, and that's this guy. And you can see down there, tiny little new growth. But isn't that beautiful? Super interesting. I can't wait to see how these guys grow out. Okay, and then we have this guy. This is the last Gunang I have in the house at the moment.
Yeah, that's gonna have to probably grow for a little bit longer, I would imagine, before we're gonna cut it, the intervariegated. Are you gonna cut it soon, or are you gonna let it grow?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to let it grow out a little bit. I want to try and get at least 5 nodes cut that will take, and that means you need to have a little bit more than that, because usually you have to put 1 node down into the propagator to get a good success on that. So it's more nodes than you can root each one. So unfortunately, I have to let it grow out a little bit, and then we'll be able to take it. But it is growing well. We've only had it, what, 3 months maybe? 2 months?
Yeah, we got it for your birthday, so.
Yeah, so January. Not that long. And it's growing well, so it should be ready to cut pretty soon. Yeah, this is a crusty GG, but last one left. There's some new growth down there. You can see tiny little green active stem popping, but yeah.
All right, we need to gather some supplies, huh? Ready? Are you ready to do our talk?
Yeah,
let's do
pretty
it.
Much.
If you want that Gunang, I'm not sure who asked for it, let me know and I'll send it to you. Okay, so today we are talking all things moss pole making and trellis making. So generally for Hoyas, we're going to use trellises. They don't need the moss pole so much the way that an aroid does. You can grow Hoyas up a moss pole. It's totally fine. They certainly will root into it and grow. Aroids, however, they will significantly size up their leaves if they feel like they're rooted and established as they're climbing. So that's why it's so much more important for aroids. We are going to pot up Caleb's Monstera today because we realized we don't have a ton of aroids left that needed the pole. So we're going to pot that up. He's going to show you how he makes these, and then we'll move on to our preferred style of trellises, which are rabbit fence trellises, and show you those as well.
Yeah.
I'm going to probably raise up this camera a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. So what you can see here is, this is kind of what the idea of what we're trying to accomplish. We have a moss pole, which is, there's a bunch of moss inside of something for support. And then it's wrapped with this cocoa coir, and then wrapped with this jute string. This provides moisture inside of here, and you can spray this with a mister to keep it moist. Initially, you have to wet the moss in a bucket. That's the best method, and I'll show you that when we get to construction. But the bottom line is, you want to make sure that when you put this together and you put your plant up against it, that this stays moist to contact the roots. You want that plant to be able to drink through the pole. And so those roots are taking in moisture, even if it's just damp, that matters. The bottom line is, the larger these poles can be, the less frequently you have to maintain them in that way by spraying them and keeping them damp. That is important, but it is one of those things that the thinner they are, the less space they take up in your pot, but the more you're going to have to maintain them. You can notice that some of these are actually used, and you'll see that there's actually a soil line on here. And so if you stick the moss part into the soil just slightly, it can sort of wick up moisture from the bottom, and therefore it sort of helps to maintain that moisture level in the pole itself. Whereas if you just have a piece of bamboo sticking straight down, that can give you support, but it's not going to give you as much in the way of the roots purchasing onto that like it's a wet tree trunk. That's when they'll upsize, the leaves get much larger, the plant will grow, it matures.
So why would you make a moss pole versus just buying one? You can get more specific to what your plant needs. We found the hardest part about buying them on Amazon when we were trying to buy them or anywhere else is that they tended to come into 3-foot sections, and a lot of aeroids will have a 3-foot section between every node. Yeah. So unless you found some that were really convertible into something that's extendable or something like that, it was hard to keep up with the fast growth that we wanted.
Yeah. Yeah, it can be difficult, especially when you're trying to grow out an aeroid and the leaves keep getting bigger and bigger. You want to have extra space for it to grow. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you want these things to be 6 feet tall. Now, is that always convenient? No, not necessarily. But when we were into growing aeroids, that was a big thing for us, was bigger leaves, bigger leaves. Mm-hmm. Well, this is how you do that.
The bigger leaves in the aeroids aren't just about bigger. They get a more mature form the larger they grow. Whereas Hoya leaves will just get bigger and bigger and look the same. Aeroid leaves will get other features like fenestrations on the monstera, or different more pointed horns, or like on some of those long leaf philodendrons.
Cebu blue is very specifically it is a plant that it morphs its shape completely from a small leaf like this
that most people
to a leaf like this with fenestrations, and it's a massive and very beautiful plant. Silvery leaves. However, it will never grow that large without climbing up something and getting that support.
Most people grow that in a hanging basket with very small leaves, which is very pretty. But I really liked when we had ours on a pole. It had leaves this long probably at that time.
Yeah. We bought some small ones and grew them out.
We did, yeah.
We also grew a larger one that we found a cutting of a fenestrated one, and that thing got massive. But it wasn't until it was attached to a moss pole and rooted in that we were able to actually get that level of growth.
I'll go back through our photo library and see if I can find a picture of it to put.
What you're looking at there is the backside of a vine. That was from a different epipremnum, variegated. But what you're looking at there is the roots that actually rooted right into this thing. And so when I took cuttings off of this, it peeled off a chunk of the vine. So this is really well secured in there, and by having those roots grow right into the pole and find moisture to sustain the plant feels a lot more confident to grow big, large leaves because it's securely supported. So that matters to the plant, and the plant all of a sudden triggers this adult maturing that is transformative.
This is a moss pole with some actual root from a plant on it.
Yeah, this has previously been used, and that's why I brought it in as a demonstration.
Yeah.
Because you can't order something this long on Amazon typically. It's a pretty long pole.
Yeah.
So
what kind of supplies do they need if they want to attempt something like this at home?
I would suggest getting some sphagnum moss.
We like this brand. It's called Best Grow.
This is a good brand if you can find it. There are others available. I find this has fewer pieces of fern root to stab your fingers with. It's not none. There is some, so you do want to be mindful. Some people like to use gloves when they're moistening this. It comes in a very firm block, right? So you have to break off some pieces. I usually put it in a bucket or a tote, something like this, and I'll moisten it and squeeze it and kind of work it to get the moisture spread out throughout the moss. You don't want it sitting in a puddle. You don't want, if you're holding it in the bucket, you shouldn't see standing water in the bottom corner like this. If I let this sit here for an hour, there's not going to be any water accumulating at the bottom. So it's damp moss, but it is definitely not soaked. It's very important that you have that level worked out. You don't want too much moisture in here, even to start. So once you've got your moss worked and it's ready to go, I tend to take a small piece off the roll of this cocoa coir. Now this stuff it's kind of it's a tactile thing. It's really gross to handle. I hate touching it. It's like scratching nails on a chalkboard kind of thing. But it is what it is. I hate it. It's giving my skin the crawls just thinking about it right now. But I gotta do it.
You can buy this in rolls at most of the hardware stores. You can buy it in mats. They make them oftentimes for the inside of planter boxes at like Home Depot or Lowe's as well.
Yeah. So what you want to do, see, this comes in a pretty thick mat, and that's way too thick. I don't want that thick of a mat. What I want to do is pull this apart fiber by fiber, or layer by layer, if you will, and create my own mat. So what you're doing here is sort of just peeling it in half-ish, or just peeling layers.
Well,
these are pretty long fibers, so you can sort of orient them and lay it out here and make yourself a nice little run of it. Basically what I want is about 8 inches, 6 to 8 inches of fairly densely matted. You should be able to see the table through in spots, but mostly you want to cover this area and create yourself a nice little mat for the length of the pole that you want to make. So I'm kind of like working this. Jeez, this is going to be a mess.
Yeah, this is always a messy chore.
Yeah, that's why I changed into my coveralls.
Yeah, I mean, the Hoyas will definitely grow up any of these. They will still love it just as much as the trellis.
So, as you can see, what I'm trying to do here is make a thin layer as evenly as I can. This is not rocket science or anything, but the better you can make it look, the more it's, going to look nice when you have it wrapped up on your plant. So take your time with this, kind of peel off little sections and fan them out a little, sort of mat them together and just sort of stack and pat. This way you're building something that you can roll in the end, but we just want to lay it out of the mat for now till we get the right length.
And you make it to whatever length you want.
Yeah. And I can work this all the way down if I wanted to make a 6-footer, because I'm basically just rolling this like a burrito, okay? Or like a doobie, if you will. So the idea is I make this a long panel that wraps around, and then for demonstration purposes, this is going to go this way, and we're going to roll it over. But for now, we're just making the containment unit that's going to go around the outside of this moss pole. Now, for demonstration purposes, I'm not going to make this to the moon, okay? I think this is about as far as I'm going to go with it.
That's about as much as you can fit on camera.
Yeah, I think that's working. That's going to do it. So I just want to make this as neat and tidy as I can. Maybe toughen up any spots that have a lot of hole there. I think that's pretty good. For the most part, I think that's going to do it. Okay, so next thing I want to do is take some of this pre-worked moss, and I just want to put a little line of it right here. Okay, it's not a ton, it's just a little bit, but this is going to be one side of the moss pole. Okay. Then you take your bamboo.
Where'd you get that?
This we got at a garden center. I think it was English Gardens, actually.
Mm-hmm.
You can buy them in packs. Usually they're around 3 foot, 4 foot long. But the idea is you can cut these with your clippers. So I have some bypass pruners here, Felco, my favorite brand. But what I want to do is lay this down across there so it sticks out by roughly 6 or 8 inches. Okay. And then I just want to cut that. Trim off the extra. We don't need that. So what I have here is this beautiful little corn dog situation that we're going to have. I just want to lay that down in the moss bed and just take a light sprinkle of moss over the top of it. Just like we're building a burrito here. Okay. So now that we have that going, it's all the way to the end. Put the moss down here. So what I'm going to do is take this and try and use my thumbs to contain it all. I kind of want to give it a little bit of a gentle squeeze against the table as I'm rolling this up. Okay. If there's any wild hairs, you want to kind of dress those up. Just make it so that you're covering it all up. Now, if I roll it and I've found that I met the other side and there's still some extra here, I can just peel that off. It's all right. It doesn't need to keep rolling and rolling and rolling on there, okay? So now, look at this little corn dog.
Is an expert at rolling things.
See that? That is a corn dog. It's like I've done this before.
Dogs, right?
Yeah. Rolled a lot of corn dogs in my day. Okay, so here's what we want to do with this. This is jute string. Usually there's a way to feed this out from the center, although it's not usually always obvious how to get it, but eventually you can pull out and get the string to come out the center of the hole there.
And we just buy that at the craft store. Right?
Yeah, nothing fancy, craft or hardware, either or.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm going to do with this is a very simple, we're going to do a running knot, just a little lasso situation here that is going to start us off on our wrap.
I don't know how to do that. Can you show us that again?
Oh, I could.
Nobody, I don't know if anyone else knows how to do that either, so.
Okay, so we're just going to tie a loop in the end of the string. So nothing fancy here. Double it back on itself, overhand knot, make a loop, pull the end of the string, the hoop part through, and we have a single knot there. Okay. Nothing too crazy. Just a loop big enough to slip your knot through. Okay. Because then we're going to trim that off.
He uses knot terms very often, Catherine, that he thinks I know what they mean, and I don't.
So then we just fold that loop down over itself and push the knot through the hole, creating this slip knot. Okay. Very easily travels up and down. No big deal. But what we want to do is get a little choke action going on here on the bottom of this corn dog. So we kind of organize it with our fingers as we're going and just get that to snug up at the dimension you want your moss pole to be. Okay. So I'm going to just go ahead and wrap around this for the first time down. And I'm just going at about a 2-inch wrap, about 2 inches away from where the string fell the first time. I'm just going to run it all the way down to the end. Okay. Don't worry if it's a little crazy, because it's going to be. But what we're doing is giving this the initial wrap down to the top. It's upside down now, but kind of hold it together here. Okay. We get to the top. And then you're not going to believe it. We're just going to go back to the bottom, crisscrossing. So now we're going about 1 inch wrap, but in the other direction, all the way down to the bottom. You'll notice that as I'm wrapping, I'm sort of like pushing it in with my hand. If there's a weird spot, I kind of wrap it and pull it in and just sort of give it that sort of even look on the way down. I mean, I have to admit, it's not my best work. However, you're getting the idea, I think. Okay. Now, we're at the bottom here. this is the part that I talked about putting in the soil. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this string, holding where I've just wrapped with my fingers, take the loop and throw it over the top. And we're just going to throw what's called a half hitch on there. Now that's an initial knot that will hold it. Now I don't have to hold everything steady, but it's just a simple, like a half of a knot, really. It's not even a full one. So I'm going to do that again. Fold this over itself, throw it over the top, put it on top of my wrap, and tighten it up. Okay, now that's pretty secure. I'm not unhappy with the way that looks. We just have to like do a little bit of, you know, reshaping a little here. Get a little gentle squeeze and a little nudge here and there. But that's not a bad looking pole, right? So I'm going to go ahead and trim my string off. I'm happy with the way that looks. Okay, so now what we've got is a few little wild hairs here. And you know what? I forgot to grab a pair of scissors. Would you grab that pair off the top of the fridge? Mm-hmm. Thank you, babe. Appreciate it. Here's the plant that we're going to use. This is from a dear friend of ours. You might know him from Plants That Zing. Jaran sold us this beautiful Deliciosa mint. And I just love it. So adorable. It was tiny when I got it, but it's growing so nicely. But it needs some support. It's a little bit flopsy. I just transplanted it into this pot, and so it needs a little bit of some encouragement in the right direction. So what I'm doing here, let me just slide that off to the side here. What I'm doing here is just running my scissors parallel to the corn dog and trimming off some of the wild crazies. Just for aesthetics, but just to make it look a little bit neater. We're going to trim this guy up and make it look real nice. See that? Little haircut. Just the wild ones that stick out too far and make it look a little rough. I mean, don't get me wrong, this is a pretty rustic moss pole, but that's kind of what I like about it. It sort of looks like a jungle tree and it's got that fern tree vibe or something like that. What's nice about this is like twice as much moss as you're going to get on an Amazon moss pole. So it stays wet a lot longer and you don't have to worry about coming back around every day and spraying this. You can spray it every other day or every third day, and that's going to be sufficient. So the long and short of this is it's not real scientific about how I do this. I've planted this plant a little bit forward in the pot intentionally because I intended to put this in here somewhat near the middle, maybe middle back. So it's not quite the middle of the pot, but it's giving that plant somewhere to encourage it to grow up. Okay, so I just want to jam that down until it's in contact. And that's roughly it. Honestly, I'm going to take out these temporary supports that I had there and you'll see how flopsy this is. But what I'll do is just gently encourage it to take support from that hole. I like to use these little Velcro strips. It's a two-way Velcro. It's very easy to reuse and it does the job in a very gentle way. Soft side in, you get a green band around. It's not unsightly to look at, but it's also a very nice way to gently hold on to your plants without doing any damage to the petioles or the stems. It's a very nice method of attaching. Now for my Hoyas, I like those little clips, but they're not quite large enough for a philodendron or a monstera stem. So you're definitely going to do some damage if you start clamping those on your philodendrons.
It can be messy to water a moss pole. I totally understand that. I like those little hand pumps, like little hand pump sprayers to just spray real close. Like I don't spray from back here. I get real close with a stream and kind of soak the pole down.
You can even contact it with the sprayer and spray straight into the pole at a couple of locations and it'll sort of disperse through. My advice is don't let the moss dry out inside of here and it wicks much better. When it becomes totally dry, it's difficult to get that
whole thing soaking
back into.
Brittany's asking, is it better to have a deeper pot like this for plants with a pole?
I prefer it. I do. Just because sometimes a shallow pot with the pole gets a little top heavy and it's a little difficult to manage the weight of a large plant on top of a big, even if it's in terracotta, it can be quite top heavy.
Well, another thing too is that when you're trying to encourage growth, for all the aerial growth you get, you have to have room for root growth as well.
True.
So you want a bigger pot if you're trying to push more growth, because you need to give those roots somewhere to go, and you don't want to have to repot this thing again right away.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of these. This is a 1 gallon. It's actually a soup container. I'm a big fan of them. I drilled my own holes in the bottom, but I think that they're a really nice way to keep somewhat of an eye. You can still see through this to see your roots and stuff. So that is kind of partly in our philosophy of being able to see your roots helps you to determine the health of your plant. Being able to see your soil helps you to see what's going on down below. And
how wet is it?
Yeah, that really matters. Especially I found with these monsteras that they seem like jungle plants, but they also live kind of like a cactus. They don't want to be watered as often as a lot of people think they do. And so you have to be very careful. They're easy to overwater, especially the highly variegated monsteras and stuff. It can be quite a fussy plant. If you're not prepared for that, it can catch you out. Again, it's one of those things that you learn as you go. And we didn't know everything when we got into this. We learned it by unaliving a few plants. But Monstera has always been a favorite for me. I'm a big fan. I got the big boy back here.
Can you see they can't see that one in the terracotta of the pole? Want to grab that?
Oh, yeah, that's another one. I have another one outside. It's not on a pole, but it is a larger variegated Monstera. But this one is just a standard variegated. But as you can see, it's been acclimated to the pole. And so it's got some roots going there. Look at that beautiful leaf, though. Pretty.
But it's actually rooted into that pole.
Yeah. Yeah, these roots are actually going into the pole. And like this pole doesn't often get watered. It should, but it hasn't.
See how much fenestration that new leaf has.
Yeah. And it's
because
big, too.
And it's not that tall yet.
Yeah.
It's because it's got that support underneath it.
Yeah, so it is what it is, but this is not, supposedly not a deliciosa.
Do you think PVC would work instead of bamboo? I've seen a lot of people use the PVC that's perforated with moss.
Yes.
If it has access to moss, it should, in theory, work. But it gives your plant less opportunities to have those, like, especially on a monstera, the nodes are only in so many places.
Yeah.
So those roots really have to, like, figure out how to get to the holes.
Yeah.
Whereas the moss, it's right up against it. Or the coco core.
Yeah, and I have seen those moss poles that have a plug on the bottom, and then you can water them from the top, and the water goes out through the holes, and the moss is on the outside of the PVC. But consider how the width of that, by the time it's all said and done, PVC and moss, and then coco coir on the outside of that, it ends up being quite a wrap. And that's going to take up a lot of your 4-inch, 5-inch, 6-inch pot. There's not a lot of room for plant there is all.
Do you only water the moss pole?
No, I actually will water the soil too, but I do take into consideration that while watering the moss pole, some water is going to escape and is going to make it into the soil. So I'll do like a half watering of the soil that I would have done if there weren't a moss pole, and if that was the only source of water. And some of it I'll directly apply right to the pole and make sure that there is some moisture there for the roots. Really, it's about touching opportunistic root nodes to moist substrate. Yeah. And that is what triggers the growth. Even if they don't grow into the pole, they grow out of the plant, and the plant's like, oh, I feel secure, I'm ready to go. Now, those roots on those monsteras, often I'll have them growing right down into the pot. So those aerial roots find soil, and that will continue to make that plant feel like it's supported. And
on the
also,
big one, you can see that.
It'll size up. Yeah, there's massive roots. Yeah, I can wheel it over a little so you can see it on camera, but as you go, these roots will try and escape on you, and I've had to bend them back and put them in the pot quite a few times. So there's quite a tangle of big aerial roots here, and yeah, but I love it. Monsteras have always been one of my faves, and I probably will always have some iteration of a monstera on hand, but I just think that the variegated ones are very cool. I don't like the Oreas. They don't like me anyways.
Circle a plant on a moss pole.
Circle a plant. I don't know what you mean by circle.
I think wrap around it.
Oh, yeah. Twist around? You could, sure. Mm-hmm. My biggest thing is, depending on how flexible your vine is, you don't want to overbend. A perfect example of that is our Maioi that's upstairs in our bedroom. It's like figure eighted and twisted and wrapped around itself like crazy. It shouldn't be alive, bent so hard like that, but it just somehow is. That's been a slow process to get it to there without it dying. Wrapping, I think you can, but it depends on the species. There are certain species that don't mind and have a flexible enough bind.
Absolutely, you can wrap that all day long.
Absolutely. Another good example of a morphing plant is the Monstera dubia. They start out with these tiny little, looks like Scindapsus leaves, and then they turn into a giant fenestrated Monstera leaf that you would have a hard time differentiating between a Burl Marx flame. It's really wild transformation that you have there, but those leaves get 3 feet long. They're absolutely massive, as opposed to these little tiny coins of the juvenile. And the juvenile has silver, like a Scindapsus. It looks really silvery and cool like that.
Shingles.
It shingles, and then once it gets going, those leaves size up very quickly, and it turns into a whole another creature. I think that's really cool. That's one thing I really did enjoy about philodendrons and monsteras is that transformation from juvenile to maturity. We don't have that in the Hoya community. Like, you might get a little bit larger leaf, but you might get flowers.
Yeah, they can need flowers.
Yeah,
for sure.
it's not like you have juvenile versus mature leaves. So.
Oh, great job! I think I saw that you're going to be hosting live on here now too, Jade. Right?
That's awesome. Congratulations on that.
Jade's local nearby us.
Yeah.
Awesome. Congratulations.
That's fantastic.
Trellising. We got to fit that in before we go too.
Oh yeah, trellising. So if you're not going to do the moss pole, if you're going to be growing Hoyas, we like to suggest these rabbit fence trellises. Okay, they don't have any moisture to encourage aerial root growth. However, this gives you a really good support system for your plant as it's climbing, and it's kind of like a ladder. There are rungs here where it won't slide down. If you're just using a bamboo skewer or something like that, the weight of the plant can actually pull the vine down that there's nothing to keep it from sliding down. So with these, you can actually attach to the horizontal rungs, and it gives you a lot more support. Now, if you're growing a plant that grows large leaves and there happens to be one in the way, one of these bars in the way, you can simply just take a piece of wire cutter and cut it out. This end and that end, it's gone. Now your leaf can grow through, no problem. And there's plenty of support still in this structure to hold up the rest of the plant.
We like this, especially for large collections, because it's inexpensive. You can get a gigantic roll of this from the hardware store in green or black pretty easily, or a large big box store online. It can be shaped to just about every size possible. What size grid is this? Is this 4x3? I think it is.
Yeah,
I think it's 4x3.
Yeah. It's made for keeping rabbits out of your garden.
Yeah.
So you can find it at like a Home Depot or something like that. But the idea is just that
you can make it in any diameter circle that you really need to fit your pot. Very thin or very large. It's very shapeable.
Yeah. So that's what I'm doing here is I just leave one set long and then cut the other side off at one of the bars, one of the verticals. You wrap it around to meet itself. Sort of shape it in like that. And then I take these pieces and wrap them around like that's the tie. So you just wrap it around and point it into the center of the circle.
Now, we've done whole talks just on trellis making. We do have a handout for that as well if you guys need more detailed information on the supplies or how to do that.
So what I do is just cut off the bottom bar, and then you have tines for your trellis to stick down into your pot, right? So then you have these little tabs that stick out towards the middle. I usually just take the tip of my offset cutters and just hold on to it with your finger so it doesn't shoot you in the eye when you cut it off, or wear safety glasses. You could do that too. But I just like to grab it. That way it doesn't go flying. You
can make a circle trellis by just doing one course and leaving the links on the bottom open and then doing a circle this way too.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's a very simple way to have good support structure for your plant.
They last for a decently long time in your pot without disintegrating on you.
It's coated wire, so there's like a paint on it or something like that. It keeps it from rusting.
Plastic.
It does rust a little on the end, so if you're going to stick this into your semi-hydro setup, take consideration you might want to stick this into your cache bow, not into the water or the reservoir. take that into consideration. You can leach iron into your reservoir. You don't want to do that. So trellises are fantastic. You can stick them straight into the soil and you don't have to worry about any rust there. Just in your semi-hydro setups, it's not the greatest plan, in my opinion. But again, that doesn't give you the moss pole scenario, but it does give you a great way to grow your Hoyas with great support. We found this to be a very cost-effective way. You can buy a roll of this for relatively cheap, and you can make endless shapes and sizes and configurations with it. So we found it to be quite useful, and you know, your creativity is your limit here. You can make all kinds of cool stuff with this, and it's just a matter of how.
I got that Germany to show them how big that can get. Yeah. He's gonna grab one of our favorite plants on that has really been a really good example of cutting out some to give some room for big leaves and how sturdy this stuff still stays. But we also use it in very tiny plants. You can just do, you know, one rung, very thin, and use it for little plants too, which is why I like it. I, of course, always appreciate a really decorative, beautiful trellis. If it's in the house, I might buy something like that. But I'm just trying to promote growth.
As you can see, our Germany is obscene. And it is just on one of these little 3-inch trellises. Very small. And actually, there's a lot of massive cutouts out of there for those big leaves that tried to grow right straight through it. So I've had to cut out a lot of this structure here, but yet it's still holding up this absolutely massive plant.
Yeah, it needs to be cut. You're right.
Right?
They asked if you bring in the no ID.
Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah. Yeah, that one grows fast. Yeah, exactly. Most of the time, you're not seeing the trellis anyway. When you have a big full plant like that, it doesn't really matter what kind of trellis is on because you're not seeing it. So if I have something that is very small leafed, Matilde, something like that, I think those are really cute on a decorative trellis. But most of our Hoyas, especially with Caleb growing them, they get big pretty quickly. So any of the smaller decorative ones are not very functional for very long. Oh, good. I'm glad you enjoyed them. So yeah, we use clips, like he said before, the little, you know, plant clips. We buy them in a bulk pack from UPT. They're very inexpensive.
No ID.
Really pretty.
Isn't that gorgeous?
Yeah, but you can see like this big leaf needed more space, so there's no bar there. We cut that out.
Yeah. Yeah, I tried to grow right up through the middle, but that's why I like these rabbit fences.
It is not a fast grower. That's why one more reason why we suspect it to be a Meredithia of some variety.
Yeah. It's got all the vibes.
Yeah.
So again, that's how we do. And I think that
there's lots of ways to do these things, but
see how everybody does and then choose what's right for you. I think that's kind of one of those things.
Reminds you of Tam Dao. Our Tam Dao is more succulent, like Singapore or almost like globulosa a little.
Yeah, and I would say there's less veins on the Tam Dao. It has a raised texture to it, but the veins on this are more dramatic, more dark.
Sarawak, yeah, that's such a pretty. I mean, I'll grow a Sarawak any way it wants to grow.
Yeah, they're so beautiful.
Yeah, they are harder with it. That short node growth, big round leaves. They can be a little harder to trellis.
They can be, absolutely. Oftentimes what I'll have to do for something like that is trim a lot of the bottom of the trellis out so that it's just 2 or 3 tines and they go kind of extra long where there's an opportunity to fit in between the larger leaves. So it's one of those kind of, it can be a little tricky. I've even had to like bend these feet out and make them go wider. Or sometimes you got to be a little clever about how you do it.
Yeah. Do you find Archibaldina grows fast for you?
For me, no. Yeah, they're pretty slow also. Yeah.
We grow the variegated. I don't think we grow the standard, just the variegated. And it's not a super quick one. That is one that we learned, however, doesn't show its variegation for some time.
We do have one that was given to us.
Oh, the regular standard?
The standard. Oh, okay. Catherine gave us one.
Oh, okay.
Ooh, Taj.
How are you trellising Taj? Do you have a trellis Taj right now?
I don't. Unfortunately, my plant bit it.
Oh,
and
no.
My mother plant had to be cut back considerably. It was on a trellis, but yeah, unfortunately, casualty. Yeah, sometimes those big mother plants, they work out great, and sometimes
they just give up. I think they live their full life and they're like, yeah, I'm done here.
Yeah.
Or you cut it too hard and it says, no, that's not the thing I wanted.
Yeah. It does. It does happen. Sometimes you just gotta move on.
Yeah.
I love that plant. It's a very cool one, and I'll grow another big one. But it's just one of those things that.
Do we have any cuttings of it left, or?
We do have a couple.
Okay, well that's good. At least
we didn't lose the species,
okay.
But we did lose the big mother plant. But
this is another reason why he's such a hoarder.
Yeah, it's just fail safe.
Yeah,
and I fail quite regularly, so I need my fail safes. No, it
is
a
fail. It's that you get busy, right? And I'm sure it happens to you guys too,
sure.
Right? You have so many plants that you think one's doing well, and you just let it go this week, and the next week you forget about it, and then the third week you come around, you're like, ooh, that was too long.
I let you go too long, bud.
Sorry.
Yeah, and that's kind of how you got to treat it. These things happen. Don't beat yourself up over it. Don't lose any sleep over, oh, I'm a bad plant parent. I shouldn't have plants because I can't keep them. No, don't lose any sleep over it. Just don't even lose a stride. Just keep on going.
All right, we are at 11:30. Did anybody want to see anything else? Have any questions? Anything like that before we head out? We will be back on Friday for our normal sale. We'll be popping in elsewhere, potentially midweek. We will be on Sunday, Easter Sunday. Join us for our normal Sunday morning, which we've decided to this morning talk about resurrecting Hoyas.
Yeah, that's a good topic. I was going to see if I had a picture of that Cebu in here.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know.
It's way back on our Instagram. If you want to do a deep dive on our Instagram, you'll definitely find that. What's your top fave if you had to pick right now, Hoya? Oh, we're always going to say Undulata.
Yeah.
Like it's clearly just one of the best. Viola is one of our most favorite ones because it's just so underrated for how fast it grows, how cute it is. We might have to talk about some propagation in the context of saving a Hoya.
Yeah.
So. I see the
that's a good one.
Yeah. Let's show that.
Let's
show you the big mama. Well, she's not so big anymore because she had to get chopped up for sale, but she's still pretty. But yeah, so I hope that was helpful information for you guys. Then we covered the questions that you had for the moss poles and stuff. If you do need more information, like I said, there is handouts available over on our website, chieftropicals.com, or in our Google Drive or in our Facebook group. So there's lots of places to access it. We have information on fertilizing, lighting, watering, all that kind of stuff.
All right, here's our big mama.
The base
big mama Domatia. Those dark green leaves on the front there are new growth. But other than that, we're pretty tight and tidy here. Lots of sun stress, but this used to be the big boy.
That one we actually grew on a tomato trellis for a long time because we started that pot years ago, and it was on like a big wrought iron tomato trellis for a bit. It's gone back outside for something else. She is amazing, right? She's just so much of the things that I love about Hoyas, the color, the wavy, the jungly. So it's hard to not always pick her as the favorite. I probably should pick another favorite every once in a while.
Yeah, this is the next generation Big Mama Undulata. Mm-hmm. So this has flowered for us 3 times now. It's not quite as big, but
I hope it flowers for you, Wendy. It's so pretty.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's just a beautiful plant, right? But there are so many beautiful Hoyas. Like this is my favorite, probably crusty Hoya, but I probably have a favorite veiny and a favorite margin and a favorite tiny.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so many different categories.
I think it's shy. That's funny. Yeah.
Yeah, bashful. That's what it is.
Favorite fertilizer. We use a product called Jax.
Yeah.
JACKS. It is a 20-20-20 all-purpose fertilizer. We are going to use it most often at half strength for our indoor plants. very easy to access, available online.
Yeah. That we also use CalMag,
Yeah.
and we use Earth Juice, which is a Hybrix molasses for horticulture.
Yeah.
You can look into that. It's some simple additives that we like to amend, not every watering, but often. And I think that it helps to add to the health of the plant for various reasons.
CalMag is healthy. Hybrix helps really with a lot of the color.
Yeah.
The rich color.
Yeah. So I enjoy using those things in moderation. Obviously, you don't want to pollute your plants with too much fertilizer, but a couple of good additives with a good 20-20-20 balanced fertilizer, I find that is a really good way to go. I stay away from the snake oil. There's a lot of stuff that you can buy out there that's supposed to make everything grow great and all that. I don't know. I don't buy into a lot of that. So we keep it pretty tight and tidy around here. Jack's is pretty cheap stuff to get a hold of, and we have good success with it. So
okay. It is 11:35. Sarah is on right now. So I think what I'm going to do is hop off here on Palm Street, rate everybody over to Sarah. We'll stay on elsewhere for a few more minutes. If you have any other questions, feel free to jump over there and ask. All right, we'll see you guys next week. Thank you so much for everything.
Thanks for joining us, guys.
Hop. Okay, instead of CalMag, I like to use Azomite, Trace Minerals, Fox Farm. We use Fox Farm for other things that we've grown in the past. So yeah, I don't have a problem with that at all.
Yeah. You just have to watch your dosage on Fox Farm. I found that some plants, namely calatheas, can be quite sensitive to it.
They do not like it.
That's 100%. A hot dose. Just know that. That's a good amount of fertilizer there. So
yeah. Yeah, but welcome to this side of the internet.
Yeah.
If you found us, thanks for joining us over here on our new website, schliefftropicals.com, being hosted on District, which is home of many other favorite marketplaces like Overgrown Oasis. TDS meter is highly recommended.
Yeah. Yeah, TDS, and I really monitor the pH too. We do RO filtered water, which I find can mess up the pH pretty hard. And balancing that out before giving it to your plants can really help with nutrient uptake.
Falling down a hole, haven't you there, Catherine?
Oh, boy.
It's carnivorous all day. Is that the meter that you use? We use a TD. We did, when we're changing anything, we would use a TDS meter. We've used our formulation so long, we don't use it every watering now.
Yeah.
But it is it measures total dissolved solids in your water.
Yeah. Yeah, so it gives you a reading of dissolved solids. It doesn't tell you what they are, though. And so knowing your pH and then knowing what your amendments are and the quantities that you use gives you a good frame of reference. TDS is going to tell you if it's wildly off. You dip your TDS meter, it's supposed to be reading around 300 and it's reading 700. You're going to be like, what happened? I put extra or something. I think I screwed this up.
Yeah.
So it gives you a good benchmark of that you're over in something, but it doesn't tell you what. So
yeah, we do mix them all in the same watering container. When we're using all three, we will mix them.
Yeah, yeah, and I find that that's a good blend. I have heard there is some science to say do your CalMag watering separately.
Yeah,
I've never really done that for Hoyas. So
we also use distilled water, and we know that the pH works out that way with distilled. Yeah. If you're doing it with tap water, you might want to monitor your pH to make sure that it's okay before giving it, right?
Yeah.
Because it can definitely shift.
Yeah, definitely you want to keep an eye on that. You know what your pH is. Your plants are going to like it right around 5. If it's too much or if it's 4 or 3, your plants might get cooked. If it's 7 or 8, your plants might not be able to reach the nutrients that are in the soil.
Now your pH will fall over a couple of days too. So you can water at 6 and it will fall through the next 2 or 3 days.
Yeah. So just something to take into consideration. Yeah. Knowing how your plant reacts to what you're giving it helps you to realize that, it doesn't need too much. Just a little is doing its job and it's what the plant needs. Yeah. The pH strips, I used those for a while, and I did find that sometimes with a heavily dosed
with molasses
round of fertilizer, the color changes, and it's difficult to tell with a color meter measuring it up against the color scale. So that's where I found difficulty with that. And you can just dip the Blue Labs sensor straight into the mix, and it's a very quick read. And now you know that's the pH. It is a little bit cost prohibitive because of the price, but you can buy pH meters for cheap, and they are quite effective. I have a little bit of a paranoia, and so I wanted to have the best equipment available for that reason, to make sure that I was going to get good, accurate readings. And with time, I was losing confidence in my readings. I was finding that the cheap meter was giving me some what seemed to be erroneous readings, and I wasn't getting the response I thought I should have been getting when I was adding my pH up and down to balance the pH. And so that led me to believe, like, I feel like I'm getting bad readings here. I want a better meter. So that's kind of how I ended up there. And now I have trust in the equipment. It is quality stuff, and I do maintain it. You have to rinse off the probe, and you also have to calibrate them from time to time. But it's part of the process, knowing what your water pH, if you know that it matters, then you want to make sure that you're monitoring that, because it does help your plants. Whether they can uptake nutrients or not is dependent on the pH. So if you give your plants all the best nutrients, but you're giving it at 8 on the pH scale, those plants can't reach any of those nutrients. It's not helping them. So again, a little bit of plant science goes a long way. And I think that, we have just enough to get us into trouble.
Yeah, truth.
By no means experts, but we enjoy. Professional plant enjoyers over here. Well, thanks again, guys, for joining us. We really enjoyed hanging out with you guys here and there. It's been a great day.
Yeah, I hope that this worked and it recorded, and that way when anyone wants to come back and watch it later, we will be able to see it.
Yeah.
I wonder if it actually works on Instagram. I never checked.
Yeah, we'll have to see.
Yeah, it records automatically here, which is one of my favorite things.
That's awesome. Yeah. So if we did it right, then this talk should be included in that, and we should have that for posterity. And if anyone wants to reference it or wants to go back and review, then there you go.
Okay.
Thank you all for joining us.
Later this week.
Have a great Sunday, a great week if we don't see you before then.
I know. Yeah, if you're over here, then you can check out in the Hoya handouts some very good information. You can visit the wish list corner and add the plants you want Caleb to cut on that list, so I can bother him about it daily.
Yep.
There's also some great spaces to ask questions if you have anything. Oh, cool. Pull quad over here, but it didn't. Okay.
Yeah.
We are going to be on Overgrown Oasis later this month, doing another class on Hoya mounting. We're going to be building some Hoya mount baskets.
Yeah, that'll be cool.
That's on the 22nd.
Yeah, everybody really liked those baskets, and so I think that's going to be a cool lesson that we can make some of those together.
Yeah, and we'll probably pop on at some point here on Overgrown to do a sale.
Yeah,
soon too.
Fantastic.
Okay. All
Lots of good stuff planned for the future, guys.
Can you post where your supplies came from? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I will make a list of the supplies and get those up as soon as possible so everyone can get a shopping cart going.
Yeah, definitely. And make your own moss poles and
I think for the class coming up.
Oh, for that class.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. We'll do that.
Preemptive strike.
All right, guys. We appreciate you.
Thanks for joining us.
Have a great week. We'll see you real soon.